Hey lovely people, Shakti here. Greetings, namaste. I thought I would celebrate being unbanned on Facebook by doing a little live today about my upcoming course, Rapture, which is starting on Sunday, May the 2nd. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about this theme and about the course itself. So welcome everyone who's going to be watching live and watching back later on. So it's really interesting. I already did a video about my course Rapture into my Awakening Shakti Facebook group. And by the way, if you're a woman who's watching this and you'd like to join, just search for Awakening Shakti. It's a Facebook group. Everyone can request to join, and I'm always sharing information and inspiration there for women on this path. So I've already done a couple of videos into that group, but this one's going live publicly. But it's interesting because I uploaded one of those videos to my YouTube channel, and I had several comments of a religious nature onto that video, which was just titled Rapture. And I was a bit surprised, but then I guess I wasn't surprised, but it just hadn't occurred to me that of course this word rapture can be used in a very religious sense. And in fact, I've just been doing some online research about it this morning because I'm curious how this word is used in different frames. Because of course for me, when I use this word rapture, I'm speaking about the embodied experience of ecstasy, of bliss, of joy, of what I would call a holy communion that is not religious in nature, an experience through the body of oneness with spirit, with source, with God, divinity, if you want to call it that, whatever you name that which is transpersonal. But I'm not using it in a religious sense at all. So yeah, on the research that I was doing this morning, it was really interesting. So there's this whole concept of the rapture as being the second coming of Christ. And those who are followers of Christ being rising up to heaven. I guess that's my understanding from the little bit of research that I've done this morning. And one of the articles that I was reading was actually entitled Desire for God. And, you know, for me, that is very much what this is about for me. So even though I'm not coming at it from a religious angle, and there's a way for me that I can take that into what I'm bringing, and it makes perfect sense and it aligns very much so. So I would in fact say that my desire for union and communion with God, with divinity, with source, is what has been absolutely driving my awakening since I guess it first started dawning in, well, about 20 years ago. And that desire for God is really what has been the underlying impetus in everything that my life is about now. And again, when I'm using the word God, I'm not using it in a religious sense. I'm using it in the sense of the divine source, the recognition of myself as one with all, the all, however, whatever phrase or word you want to use, that's my understanding. And when I talk about awakening as a woman, and the work that I do in that realm, it is very much about waking up to the truth, to the recognition of who I am, of who we are. And for me, that journey is very much a part of the tantric journey that takes our sexuality with it, and reframes our sexuality because it has been so extremely distorted. So whereas the patriarchal matrix conditioning and programming and culture has separated sex and spirit, has separated body and mind, has separated our soul from our body. For me, the reawakening of the feminine is the journey to the reintegration and the holistic embrace of all of these dualities and polarities. And of course, I'm working primarily with sex and spirit, masculine and feminine, body and mind, because there's been such a polarized splitting through the conditioning of the patriarchal way. And so I wanted to speak a little bit more about the experience of rapture and what the promise and the potential of that is and can be. And so in previous lives, I've talked about an experience where through the raising of my Kundalini Shakti energy and the embodiment of that, I experienced an opening that was, for me, the embodied experience of what I could only describe as making love with God. I've also described an experience where I was receiving conscious touch on my energy body and very lightly on my physical body, not sexual touch, just conscious loving touch, and how in that experience, again, I experienced myself as being the all and being one with all, and as being the pure embodiment of Shakti in her meeting with Shiva, with pure consciousness. Now, this morning I was meditating, and for me, very much and very frequently, there's also the experience of that inner union on all layers and all levels with all that I am in meditation. And for me too, that has the taste of rapture, of ecstasy, of bliss, of divinity, of the nectar of life with it. So there are many ways to have this experience, and it takes all levels of our being with it. So even though when I speak about my work, I'm focusing on speaking about sexuality and spirituality, in actual fact, every layer of your being is touched and called to this true communion of oneness, the Shiv Shakti merger, the dawning of the awakening, the self-realization of our true nature. And I want to come to just share with you a little bit of how I experienced that in meditation this morning, and how that relates back to Tantra, which is one of the modalities that I teach. Tantra, yoga, and dance are my holy trinity, as I call them. So I'm going to just read you a little bit from the Radiant Sutras, the translation by Lauren Roche of the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, because I think this really gets across very clearly this experience that we can have. And yeah, what I want to say, I also want to say, in terms of my understanding of what I read this morning about the religious interpretation of this as a second coming. Well, my understanding is that Christ consciousness is here now. We do not need to wait for the second coming of anybody. We are the coming. We just have to show up and recognize, and we're born again. We don't have to wait for some, the clouds to part and some trumpet to sound its horn, to make its noise in the skies, to recognize Christ consciousness, to have a relationship with Christ in that esoteric sense, in fact. And of course, Christ consciousness represents the divine masculine, love, truth, awakenness, awakened beingness. So that's already available to us here and now. So for me, this whole nature of, or the whole question of rapture and waiting for something, I'm not waiting for something. I'm here to live this now. This is my choice, my devotion, my searching, my quest now, not waiting, and not putting the onus of, or the power, or the truth, or the consciousness outside myself. It's here, right now. So in the opening verses to the Radiant Sutras, Shiva, the divine masculine, is speaking to Shakti, the divine feminine. And here's one a few verses that I just love, and every time I hear these, it just reminds me, you know. And so Shiva's speaking to Shakti. Sacred texts sing of my reality, but I cannot be found in them, for I am the one listening. I am always closer than breath. That's the line that always gets me. That's, for me, when I read that line, that's orgasmic. I am always closer than breath. Heat and fire are not two separate things. These are just verbal distinctions. The goddess and the one who holds her are one and the same. We are inseparable, and the way to me is through her. So, I am always closer than breath. When we are, you know, when I was speaking at the beginning of this live about the desire for God, the quest for God, which for me has been very much been expressed through relationship and sexuality. And I think it is for, dare I say, all human beings, the quest for one, the quest for oneness, the quest for the beloved, the quest for union is ultimately this quest for God. And we're looking for God outside ourselves before recognizing that God is here and we are one already. It's just that there's this programming of forgetting and separation, and that's why we have masculine and feminine and man and woman seeking and questing for reunification, right? But as we begin to recognize, I am always closer than breath, so not looking out there, but feeling, discovering, finding, remembering in here, we take the next breath, and that breath is so deliciously intimate to us, and there is nothing else. And in that moment of meeting the self, meeting the sensation, meeting the flow of the breath, there is a blissful experience of unification, and there is nothing else. This is another meaning of the word rapture, is to be transported out of, or to be suspended out of time. And this is what happens in that moment of rapture. There is nothing else. There is no future, there is no past. There is simply the bliss of this moment and the bliss of the recognition of the truth of our nature in this moment. I am always closer than breath. The goddess and the one who holds her are one and the same. We are inseparable. So again, this is the nature of the divine recognition, the divine rapture of blissful unification with our divinity, with our source, which we don't need a man or a woman for. We don't need an external depiction of a deity on a pedestal. You know, we don't need somebody to come out of the clouds and appear to us. The revelation is within. And Shiva goes on to say, the way to me is through her, meaning the way to me is through the feminine. So this is the Tantric way, the way to recognition, the way to awaken to truth, and the way to this union, this unification, he says here, is through her, which means it's through our fullest immersion in our immediate embodied experience. So the feminine is your body, your emotions, your thoughts, everything that you can touch, taste, smell, and hear, and feel, and sense with your senses. She is nature, she is earth, she is every living manifest thing is the feminine. Every movement of energy, everything that is alive and shimmering and active is the feminine. And then the Tantric way, embracing all of this, is the route to oneness. In fact, the Tantric way, there are many ways. That is actually just one way. But that is why when we fully embrace and connect with our sexuality and our sexual energy, because she is that, right? We can have the experience of oneness. We can have the experience of rapture. We can have the experience of blissful ecstasy and opening into a divine union by activating, flowing, and feeling the full power of our Shakti sexual energy, which is never separate. Ultimately, it's never separate from him. Can't be. You can't have one without the other. How could you have the experience of your sexual energy awakening and rising and flowing if there were no consciousness to meet it? Couldn't happen, right? So you can't have one without the other. She needs space to dance in. She needs consciousness to meet her. Otherwise, there's just her and nothing else, or otherwise there's just emptiness and nothing else. So they're inseparable. And I'm going to conclude with another verse from the Radiant Sutras before I tell you a little bit more. Oh yeah, I was going to tell you about my course, wasn't I? But I'm going to read you this verse. So this is verse 50 from the Radiant Sutras. I'm going to have to put my glasses on, I think. Can I read it? Yeah, I can read it without my glasses, actually. Okay, here we go. Here's the Sanskrit. Gita adi vishaya asvada sama saukya ekatatmana yogina tat mayetvena manasrute tat atmata. English. Bit longer. All around you, in every moment, the world is offering a feast for your senses. Songs are playing. Tasty food is on the table. Fragrances are in the air. Colors fill the eyes with light. You who long for union, attend this banquet with loving focus. The outer and inner worlds open to each other. Oneness of vision, oneness of heart. Right here, in the midst of it all, mount that elation, ascend with it, become identical with the ecstatic essence, embracing both worlds. You get it? The outer and the inner merge into oneness of vision, oneness of heart, when we fully open, receive, feel, taste, smell, see with presence. When we open to that, there is nothing else. We melt and merge into this unified instant. And I love, the words that he uses. Mount, it's got a sexual connotation. Let's ride with it. Let's enjoy that sexual excitement. Mount the elation. Ascend with it though. So ascend with it as the energy rises. Become identical, so no separation, with the ecstatic essence, embracing both worlds. Oh, yum, yum, yum. Isn't it gorgeous? Yeah. So even just in allowing ourselves to hear and feel and receive those words, they're a transmission. They're a transmission that awakens. You feel it. Yeah, you feel it. And so just a quick final word to say. Yeah, you feel it exactly. There's a Shakti in the transmission. So starting Sunday, May the 2nd, it's a week and a bit away, I'm offering a course, Rapture. It's for women. It's a 6-week online course and it's going to be intense. It's going to be immersive. You're going to have a lot of input and support from me over those 6 weeks. A very sacred, powerful Shakti container. And we are going to travel through basically the content of my upcoming book, which is called Rapture, which takes you through the whole process of your unfolding awakening of your sexuality and your spirituality as one, from the foundations of Tantra, from the foundations of yoga, from the foundations of meditation and movement. So embodied, experiential, with transmission and teaching as well. 6 weeks starting May the 2nd. If you want to know more, beautiful women, I call you to come and join us. It's going to be powerful, life-changing, healing, potent. It's going to be divine. So just if you want to know more, post a comment below or message me and I will send you the information. Give me your email address so I can email you, because I have a document that I send out. Any questions, post them below. And that's it really. I'm just really, really excited to be offering this. So let me know. And thank you everyone who's watching live and anyone who watches back. Thank you for joining me for this little tantric, delicious moment. Namaste.